not crazy about it, so I guess it is what it is.
Yeah.
Good evening,
You are
everyone.
multitasking today.
Thank you so very much.
Oh, good.
I hope everyone's okay today. We'd like to welcome you to the regular meeting for the Asheville City Council for May 28th, 2013. If you could just take a moment to look at your cell phones to ensure that they're either on off, vibrate, or silent, so it will not disrupt the proceedings. All right, if we could all stand together, we can recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all so very much. Tonight's invocation will be given by Councilman Bothwell.
A friend of mine suggested that a short passage from a book I wrote in 2010 would be an appropriate invocation, so I'm going to read a short passage here. We are wanderers, you and I. We're on a too short sojourn from wasn't to isn't, on a trajectory we were thrown into, on a pathway we invent. Our footsteps are tiny, and even the most dedicated walkers among us do not travel far between birth and death. We tend to focus on the local landscape, on the immediate event, and to whatever extent we see beyond depends in large part on the stories of others. A few have gone up to the mountain to peer into the next valley. A few have crossed the ocean and returned, and now a very few have looked back from space. The world seems vast to a walker with a two-footed stride. The sky seems high and the ocean's deep to a 2-meter being looking upward and down. Only the insight of 10,000 generations' tales can begin to instruct us in the truth of it all. Our biosphere is a thin skin on a wee world near a middling star in an average galaxy in a normal cluster among billions. It is only by the greatest good fortune that we have come to be. It is only in this one known place in the cosmos, in this one brief interval in the long stretch of time, that stellar radiation and chemical recombination have erupted into life. It is only in this thin skin of air and water, no thicker than the varnish on a classroom globe, that life emerged, photosynthesized, ate, mated, dreamed, and spoke. We are wanderers, you and I. It is only in this last flickering moment that we wanderers have set ourselves to meddling with the biology and chemistry and nuclear forces that have balanced their own books to create our living planet. It is only in the last quarter of a moment that there have been enough of us for our meddling to have much effect. And it is only in the last blink of our eye that we have begun to understand that our numbers and our meddling can affect systemic change in the fragile bubble of life that is our world. We have built our empires on petroleum, the stored energy of 100 billion sunrises, and are using up that energy in less than 100,000 days. We've permutated organic chemicals to do our bidding as pesticides, solvents, and fuels, and have introduced those twisted mutagens into every living cell on Earth. The day I wrote these words, I heard news that a patent had been granted for the 5 millionth chemical compound. 5 million new chemical compounds introduced to our world, and not a clue how most of them interact, catalyze each other, or disrupt living cells. We've punched holes in the sky and fermented dead zones in the oceans. The pharmaceuticals in our urine build up in estuarine fish, and tests of whales around the globe reveal heavy metals and chemicals at levels that qualify them as toxic waste sites. We've soured the rain and ripped away the topsoil where the magic of life must set root. Perhaps we see more clearly now, and perhaps there is time for change. Not every kid with a chemistry set blows up the basement after all. But the changes must be rapid and widespread if we are to undo our deviltry before it undoes us. I'd like you to look around at the other people in this room. Look at each other. Just take a moment and think about all of these people here in this moment, sharing this extraordinary experience of being alive and of dedicating ourselves to working toward improving the lives of the people in this city. One small community on one small planet in the immeasurable vastness of space. As the astronomer Carl Sagan once wrote, "For small creatures such as we, the vastness is bearable only through love."
Thank you, Councilman Bothwell. The next order of business are our proclamations. And we do have two this evening, although one is only listed on the printed agenda. And so I'm going to do the recognition of the City of Asheville Youth Leadership Academy students, along with Erica Garmer and the students who participated in Kayla. And Councilman Smith is going to do the proclamation proclaiming May 25th through June 1st is Asheville Beer Week. And we will have Caroline come up and receive that. And Caroline, we sincerely apologize about not getting that on the printed agenda. And Councilman Smith caught it as well, and so staff responded quickly, and so we apologize for that oversight, okay? And so that's why he's going to have the honor of presenting it, because he wanted to make sure it was proclaimed in the city. A couple of things I want to say about Kayla before I come present some items for the students. 6 years ago this June, the members of the Asheville City Council welcomed the inaugural class of the City of Asheville Youth Leadership Academy, better known as Kayla. Since that very first day, Kayla students have exceeded our highest expectations as role models, as future leaders, as contributors to our great community. Kayla was designed to introduce Asheville's young people to professional careers, to assist them in their quest for college, and to develop their leadership skills through volunteering. It is without question that by this definition, Kayla is a success, but only because the Kayla students have made it so. Since 2007, more than 100 Asheville High students have been selected to participate in the nationally recognized City of Asheville Youth Leadership Academy. Kayla places its students in prestigious paid summer internships and provides year-round workshops that emphasize leadership development and college preparation. This year's graduating Kayla seniors have all been accepted to colleges across the state and region, including UNC Chapel Hill, UNC Greensboro, North Carolina A&T, Winston-Salem State, Johnson & Wales, Johnson C. Smith University, Berea College, and Howard University. Collectively, class of 2013 Kayla students completed more than 30 community service projects, representing more than 400 hours of service. Highlights of Kayla year include attending the first annual Me 2-Week Conference on Social Justice and participating in a semester-long partnership with UNC Asheville that explored the challenges of teen relationships through the creation of a public art installation. So with that, I will call all the students up and then we'll present certificates and say thank you. As the students are coming forth, it's amazing. This is my last opportunity to work with Kayla students, and so I'm a little biased and I'm extremely proud. But the President of the United States, President Obama, has crafted some legislation, and it's not legislation. He put together an agenda packet for summer programs, encouraging cities across this country to do exactly what Kayla is doing. And so it feels good to be on the forefront of something that is being recognized nationally, but we've been doing for 6 years. And so students, I'm very proud to have you all here today and to let you know you're part of an initiative that's now being modeled across this country. So I'm really excited about that. And with that, I'm going to call you by your last names, only because I don't want to mispronounce your first names. All right. Mr. Alvarado. All right. Congratulations. Miss Arena. Did I get it right? Close enough. I thought I was trying to avoid the hard part. Miss Beard. Labria? Not here. Miss Bunn? Brianna? Miss Bergen? Brandy? Crooks? Miss Crooks.
Oh, all right.
And parents, you can come take pictures if you like. Just Miss Crudup. Mr. Davis. Emmanuel Figueroa. How did I do? Figueroa. Mr. Folston? Ms. Gaines? Ms. Hallam? Mr. Hines? Ms. Jefferson? Mr. Johnson? Ms. Jones? Lumi Garcia? Ooh, Abel? Emmanuel? You're welcome. Mr. Lynch? You're welcome, dear. Marquez? Miss Marquez? Marquez. Mr. Middleton? Ms. Nelson? Ms. Porter? Ms. Reynolds? On Ruth? You're welcome. Ms. Simmons? You're welcome. Sitton? Ms. Sitton? Ms. Taylor? Ms. Young? All right, and just for the record, if you want to state your name and what college you're going to, or what high school you're going to continue, or what grade you will be in, that'd be great. And we'll just go around, well, we'll just make it this way. How about that?
I'm Diana, and I'm going to go to Asheville High and be a junior next year.
I'm Simone Simmons, and I'm in SILS at Asheville High, and I'll be a junior next year.
I'm Kalia Hallam, and I will be a senior next year at Asheville High.
I'm Jonica Cooks, and I'm a rising senior at Asheville High.
I'm Monique Gaines, and I'm a rising senior at Asheville High.
I'm Nieva Arana, and I will be attending Berea College in the fall.
I am Michael Davis, and I am a rising junior at Asheville High School.
I'm Brianna Crudup, and I'm a rising senior at Asheville High School.
I'm Jalen Folks, and I'll be a rising senior at Asheville High School.
I'm Tyshawn Johnson. I'm going to be a senior at Asheville High School.
My name's Kayla Reynolds, and I'll be attending North Carolina A&T in the fall.
Hi, I'm Shari. I'm going to Johnson & Wales in the fall.
Hi, my name is Quintaria Stitt, and I'll be going to UNCG in the fall.
My name is Emmanuel Figueroa, and I'll be a rising senior at Asheville High.
Good afternoon. My name is Terrence Lynch, and I will be attending Howard University as an international business major.
I'm Jacob Hines, and I'll be a rising senior at Asheville High.
I'm Owen Ruth, and I will be a junior next year at Asheville High.
I'm Abel O'Malley Garcia, and I will be attending UNC Chapel Hill in the fall.
I am Emmanuel O'Malley Garcia, and I'm a rising senior at Asheville High.
I'm Omar Alvarado, and I'll be a senior at SOSA.
Let's give them a hand, please. And to Gary, the last thing I want to say about, this is the last time I have the opportunity to do so, I want to publicly thank you for supporting Erica Germer in this position. I don't believe Kayla would have had the success that it has had over the years without the leadership of Erica Germer. Because of her leadership and working with the students have collectively raised, the seniors here, as well as those who've gone before us, before them, have raised over $500,000 in scholarships. And it's because of her leadership, her commitment with the students, helping them not only through the Kayla program, but also after they graduate. And so I just want to say thank you, Erica, for your leadership. Thank you so very much. I don't know what the future holds for Kayla, but I'll just say this, that you have changed lives through Kayla. You have broken generation curses where individuals who were the first to graduate from high school because of you, people who were didn't have anyone in their family to go to college, they were the first to go into college because you believed in them and helped them push past the status quo of their family's history. And so I just want to say thank you publicly, and I sincerely appreciate all that you've done for the Kayla program.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bellamy and City Council. This is the sixth time that I've had the opportunity to stand in front of you and thank you at the end of the accumulation of a Kayla year. As you know, we run June to May, so it's a little bit strange, but I can't take the credit. The credit belongs with the students here representing the program tonight. I do want to thank you, though, wholeheartedly for your support over the years, as well as the city departments who agree to take on these students and host them in the internships over the summer. The IT department, the public works department, who else? Fleet maintenance and transit. We had fire, police. Who else am I missing? Oh, the WNC Nature Center had a student. Well, those are the other partners, but I meant the city. So anyway, I really appreciate the city department who hosted these students and gave them such meaningful experiences that they'll take going forward. I'd also like to recognize Gio Figaro, who's in the audience. He's an alumni of the Kayla program. So Gio, just raise your hand. Hello. Gio. And just to prove to you that the Kayla program is working in recruiting the next generation of workers, Gio has been interning. He's a student at UNC Asheville, and he's been interning with our finance department for the last year. So hopefully he'll continue to do so. Anybody wants to say something before we turn over the mic? Come on up. Oh, not to me. You have to pick them.
I just want to say thank you to you all for allowing Kayla program to continue for so long, and I just ask that you allow it to continue. Furthermore, this really is a great program. Every moral that it is designed to instill, it does so, and it does promote, good people, as you can see. So I just wanted to tell you thank you for this great blessing, and I hope that it continues.
Beer City Week. Councilor Smith.
So we're going to move from the under 18 crowd to the over 21 crowd with this next proclamation. There's some whereases I'm about to read here, but there's a couple that aren't on here that I just want to mention. Asheville's got the best beer in the United States of America because of the industry of so many microbrewers who started up here, and now we've got some great partners like Sierra Nevada and Oscar Blues in the region, and more specifically New Belgium Brewery coming to town and not only pledging to make this great beer, but also to be such important parts of our community, and that's why this proclamation is important tonight. Is there someone from Beer Week who's going to be? Come on up. So I'm going to read this to you and then ask you if you'd like to say a couple words about Beer Week. Sure. All right. Whereas Asheville Beer Week was established in 2012 to promote the beer industry and beer tourism in Asheville and Western North Carolina, and whereas Asheville Beer Week is organized by a committee of regional beer industry workers, and whereas Asheville Beer Week will offer a variety of promotional events in and around the region, including the 3rd annual Beer City Festival on June 1st, and whereas this year's 8-day celebration will include keynote speakers, education, tastings, dinner, and other beer-centric events, and will bring beer industry folks and beer lovers from all over the country to visit our region. Now, therefore, Terry Bellamy, Mayor of the City of Asheville, does hereby proclaim May 25th to June 1st, 2013 as Asheville Beer Week.
Thank you. And the Vice Mayor said she wants one of those shirts. I just want to say thank you so much. It's our 2nd year we're doing this, and it means a lot to us. All the committee members, we're all part of the beer community. Either we work at bars, breweries, distributorships around town, and it means a lot to us to really bring our passion towards, show it to you and bring it out there to the public. In the last few days, I've talked to a lot of bars and people around town, and everyone is saying, oh my God, Caroline, we had record numbers this weekend. I talked to people that traveled from out of state, Vermont, Maine, just to come to Asheville Beer Week. And I think it's a great time, not only showing off our great craft beer scene, but also our beautiful town, our great restaurants, and really what a vibrating, wonderful downtown community we have. So thank you so much.
All right, the next item of business is our consent agenda. Any individual in the community wishing to address council on any item on the printed consent agenda, items A through I. I do want to highlight the fact that the City of Asheville is partnering with the county to deal with the water lines issue in the CTS area, and we're really proud of this partnership that we are crafting, and so it's a good win-win situation, and so it will provide water to areas that have had issues with CTS for many years. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Motion made and second. Any further questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The motion carries. Next, we have our presentations and reports, and we have several, council. The first one this evening, actually, we only have one. The first one, the one we have this evening is item A, the bylaws for the Asheville Downtown Improvement District, and Councilman Davis.
Mayor, thank you. In fact, as Ruth, I suspect you're going to come forward to speak to that, but as Ruth comes forward, and or Rick and Franzi, whoever wants, if everybody wants to come, it's fine. I think everyone here on council is very familiar with the work that's gone into developing these bylaws, and I think that most of the city is very aware of the effort that has been put into developing a downtown business improvement district, and a lot of hard work, a lot of time has been spent. The interim board worked long and hard, and then we developed a board that was appointed partially by council and then some at-large membership. And in the economy that we found ourselves in, we elected at this time that it would not be prudent to move this forward with the budget difficulties. But this group of people that's worked so hard on this and worked very, very hard on developing the bylaws did so knowing that this body of work would continue to be in place by presenting it and it being accepted by council to give it framework and structure as we go forward. I think the importance of doing this is a recognition of the work that's been done and the potential that this has for future. I think that to speak to the success of the committees or the boards in this past number of years that's been working on it, it's made council and made our citizens aware that there needs to be special emphasis given to the downtown. It's so effective that in our budget this year we are looking at a fairly significant, and I may be wrong on the amount, but I think it's about $340,000 of, and I may be wrong on that amount, Gary, but somewhere thereabouts that's been dedicated to the downtown and the effort that these good folks were taking to ensure that the downtown receives the care that it needs in light of the amount of heavy traffic and people just loving it to death, that we have to do things other than just say, well, you know, it's out there and people will take care of it. We have to put emphasis on it, and I think at least that has come from recognition that there's a need there, and recognition by this group of people that we have to take care of this downtown, and these bylaws are a way of saying we understand what's going on here and we want to put it in place so that when the board does come together and works toward a future that's really enacted and were to make a business improvement district, that this will be in place and we can work from it. So I hope I've not stolen too much of what you're going to say, but I just wanted to thank you all for the work you've done.
All right. Thank you very much. And Jan, thank you because you have worked so hard with our committee. But Mayor Bellamy, Vice Mayor Mannheimer, members of City Council, I'm Ruth Summers, and tonight I represent the board of the Asheville Downtown Improvement District. You've previously received and reviewed our bylaws. We totally believe the bid is a collaboration between the board and the City of Asheville. Tonight, we are requesting that City Council approve our bylaws. We're ready to move forward. We know that moving forward will be a grassroots effort, but we believe we have some support for that. And on a separate note, on July 1st, the Asheville Downtown Improvement District, in cooperation with a lot of other organizations, will sponsor a cleanup day in the Central Business District of downtown. We hope you all will attend. If you want to bring your brooms and your rubber gloves and anything else to help us, more information will follow soon about that. But we are planning a cleanup day basically before all of the wonderful tourists come back to Asheville. So we are requesting that our bylaws be approved tonight. If you have specific questions, there are other members of the board here. But thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Okay. Council, as Ms. Summers has already stated, we've seen this a couple of times. Questions, comments, or motion? Councilman Bothwell.
Yeah, I have a comment. I appreciate the effort that's gone into the work on the bid, and I understand that there are some people who are very committed. I think it would be a wonderful thing to be a volunteer group like the other neighborhood groups around the city. I don't see that the city should be approving bylaws for a volunteer group. I remain convinced that a majority of taxpayers in Asheville are not in favor of a bid, and I think absent knowing where people stand on that, it would be a mistake to hand over tax money to a non-elected board. In the same way that I think that the idea of a non-elected water board is a very bad idea, for exactly the same reason. Tax money should be spent by elected officials who can be thrown out on their ears if you get unhappy with them. So I'll be voting against the bylaws because I don't think we should be approving them in the first place, and I will continue to vote against forming a bid.
Councilman Smith?
This has been a really amazing journey. I've, in talking to so many folks, been on all kinds of the fence regarding this issue. And I think that one thing everyone's agreed on throughout this is we have to maintain our downtown's vibrancy, that we are the heart of the economic engine, not just of Asheville or Buncombe County, but of Western North Carolina, and that we've got a jewel here that we have to maintain. And I want to thank everybody who's contributed to this, because I know how deeply you're committed to Asheville and how you want a clean, green downtown that's safe and nice to visit, as well as live in. Y'all looked at a whole bunch of different models, and here we are in this really unusual and unfortunate time with our legislature where there's a big tax shift going on and all kinds of financial uncertainties. And that's why I was really heartened when I was looking at this year's proposed city budget that so much of what y'all came to us saying we have to have is showing up for the next 5 years in our city budget here. There's $1.6 million for clean and green services, $3.3 million for downtown multimodal improvements, $350,000 for recycling and trash containers, $1.3 million for underground utilities, and $2 million towards the Asheville Art Museum renovations. About $8.5 million for stuff that wasn't going to be there before. And I credit y'all's efforts directly with those numbers showing up in this budget. Your leadership is what got us here, and I'm really grateful for it. And I think we're going to have to continue to rely on your collective wisdom as we go forward here. But I don't think it's the right time to create the bylaws for an organization that we don't intend to fund directly. I don't want to form a board in name only and give the impression that, you know, we're going to be there any minute, and so I think that the bylaws y'all have created may well be something that will form the basis of a future bid, but I don't think that now is the right time.
Councilman Hunt.
I intend to support the resolution. I view the point we find ourselves at now is the planners and organizers of this effort wish to have their corporate structure and their governance structure validated. It was this council several months ago that said that if there is to be a bid, the bylaws must be approved by us. And so I think I view this request as not an endorsement or an indication that City Council is committed to a bid, rather a stop along the way that allows the bid governance structure and corporate structure to move forward so that at least those questions are out of the way. Now, it is true that there were points of concern expressed over the past few months as we built toward this. There are indeed council members that do not intend to support the formation of a bid. I have an open mind about it. This bit of information about clean and green services being provided in our budget for this coming year and in some ways for the long-range budget, I know is perhaps a twist that some of the advocates of the bid may not have been aware of before today. Perhaps you were. It does seem that our city's budget may be headed towards funding that, but the budget that the city manager is presenting to us today that council received just very recently does also assume a cultural and recreation authority being created in partnership with the county, and that may or may not come to pass. In short, I think there are scenarios where we could evolve to having a bid at some point in the next year or so. I think it's perhaps less likely than it may have been a few months ago, but I'm not prepared to deny these bylaws and shut down the bid effort tonight. I do want the organizers to have a good appreciation of where we are politically, feasibility-wise, especially the budget. The budget including money for clean and green, the city manager's recommended budget. So I think Jan Davis is our member of council that is also a member or involved with the bid board, and I think that in the next few days that we need to talk further and just make sure we are all caught up together where we are. But I do think it's appropriate that we acknowledge these bylaws today. I put a lot of effort into reviewing bylaws earlier, worked closely with some of the board members. They are the bylaws that we, several of us on council, looked at closely and wanted to see. So I want to validate it from that standpoint as well. So I intend to support the resolution.
Councilman Davis.
With that, Mayor, I would also like to add that this does not create a bid. It does not, in itself, the adoption or acceptance of the bylaws does not create a bid. It does give these people a working document to continue the work, to look at what needs to be done downtown, and at the time is right, if the feeling Cecil changes to where that that you would see a majority of folks in your mind that was wanting this, the time was right, this would lay the groundwork and be the foundation of that happening. And these folks are so sincere that the day after it became apparent that we were not going to be able to fund it or at least put it into into action this year, they came together and people started talking around the table, what can we do to continue this good work? And it was even to the point of adopting streets, of adopting parts of streets. And the important thing was that the group be bound together with some more than just we want to do it. It keeps it alive, it keeps it functional, it keeps it focused in this hard-working group of people's mind. And with that, I'm going to move that we accept these bylaws as they are written because they do represent what council wanted to see.
Second.
The motion has been made and properly second. Council, I'm going to support the motion that's been put forward for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons why it's come before us this evening is because the City of Asheville is appointing individuals to this committee. And it's not like a traditional nonprofit that operates on its own. If it does become a taxing authority, which it is not tonight, we are not establishing it as a taxing authority. And so I think that's the biggest difference, and that's why it's coming before City Council. So there's no tax rate. Property owners are not going to be taxed. But in order for them to apply for grants, they have to have bylaws. And so it's important that we support the bylaws at this time for them to be able to apply for funds. And we do know, or I have been informed that there are some foundations who are seeking to fund them, but they have to be a 501c3. In order to get their 501c3 status, they have to have bylaws in place. And so if we're truly going to have a partnership with them, then we need to support the infrastructure for them to be in place. Another thing is they have worked hard on this issue, and so I'm willing to support that. And so I just want to make sure the community does know that we are not setting a tax rate. This is not a taxing authority, but in order for us to have a true partnership with them, in order for them to pursue private funds from different entities, they have to have this as part of that process. And so I am going to support the motion. Councilman Bothwell.
I hesitate to carry it farther, but I would rebut that one does not need approval from the city to form a 501c3. There are lots of nonprofits that operate and get grant money without approval from a government, except for taxing approval from the federal government.
You do know that we approve through resolutions. We could have done this through a resolution to accept the same things, and it could have been then adopted to their bylaws. But the entities that we appoint to, they have come to City Council. So whether it's MSD, the Airport Authority, it's just been years ago since those things have been done. And so if we're appointing to that board, we do have a say-so in how it's governed and how it's formatted. So that's why it's coming to this table. I mean, technically, we could go, Bob, can't we go through a resolution and put the exact same things and call it a resolution and not bylaws, and then they pull their bylaws from it?
Yes, ma'am. As I recall, this was this is before you because you asked for it to be.
And so we can do tomato. We could delay it and put it as a resolution, and then they take it as their bylaws, or we can just go ahead and do it today as the bylaws. But because we appoint, it's different from those nonprofits that the City of Asheville doesn't appoint to.
Okay.
So that's what makes it different. Yeah. And so if we really want them to be successful in not using taxpayer dollars, they have to have the tools. Any other comments?
Just one more thing. So it looks like this is going to be successful tonight, and I hope that some of this grant opportunity certainly comes to pass, and I'll look forward to working with y'all.
All right. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign?
Aye.
The motion carries 5-2. Council, we have a couple of updates. The first update is WNC Regional Air Quality. Dr. Dean Cowell. Might have messed that one up. Call.
My name is Dean Call.
and I'm the vice chair of the Citizens Governing Board. And I have a good story to tell. There's some neat things happening in the air, in the air quality of this area. So I'd like to begin with the goals and objectives of the agency. If you look here, you'll see that our goal is to reduce air pollution in western North Carolina while preserving economic vitality. And we do this by enforcing federal, state, and local air quality regulations. This involves permitting of industrial and area sources, compliance and enforcement, asbestos removal, and open burning. We also monitor air quality. This is, we have a monitor that is part of a national network. And so if you want to know the quality of the air anywhere in the country, you can go to websites. The most famous one is AirNow. We're also involved in education. That involves pollution prevention projects. We have lots of outreach projects, which I'll discuss towards the end of the talk. Can you hear me? Okay. We have an indoor quality hotline and a website that has lots of really neat information in it.
I'm sorry, Dr. Paul, if you could talk into the microphone,
Okay.
then our audience can hear as well.
Oh, you're recording. Yes. So let's talk about air pollution in western North Carolina. The two major types of air pollution are ozone and particulate matter. Ozone is formed from volatile organic compounds. Of course, we have fancy words like VOCs and nitrogen oxides, NOx, and these things react to make ozone. Ozone formation in this part of the country depends mostly on NOx. NOx is produced by cars, trucks, and the major source of NOx is the Skyland power plant. Particulate matter forms from unburned fuel, acid rain, and natural nitrogen cycles. These are very small particles. They're smaller than 2.5 microns. They cause haze, which is reduced visibility. In yellow there, you'll see that both of these types of pollutants cause heart problems and respiratory illnesses. Another issue that is important is weather and geography. We live in a bowl which sometimes traps pollution. So let's look at the good news. This is a graph showing the trends in ozone concentration, and I'd like to point out that if you have ozone, there's a bunch of other bad stuff there. But if you look along the x-axis, you'll see time. On the y-axis, you'll see concentrations. In 1997, this was the ambient, or the air, this was the air quality standard. 2012, that was lowered to 2008. In 2008, it was lowered to 75 parts per million. The important thing here is you can see a downward trend. And right in this period here is when the scrubbers were put on the plant in Asheville. I'll get it right in just a minute. Let's look at the trends in fine particulate matter, or PM 2.5. This stuff, as I mentioned, causes haze and respiratory illness. These particles are really small. They scatter light and they go deep into your lungs and they cause serious health issues. Again, we have time on the x-axis, concentration on the y-axis. You can see the 2006 standard. That was lowered in 2012. But again, you have a similar trend. This is good news. This is really good news. So I'm going to talk about some initiatives that the agency has undertaken, and one of the responsibilities is to regulate open burning. In Asheville, open burning is not allowed. There's yard waste pickup, so there's no reason to burn yard waste. In the county, there is no yard waste pickup, and so there are people who burn, but they're only allowed to burn leaves, branches, and other plant growth. You can't burn trash, lumber, tires, or old newspapers. The agency gets about 60 complaints a year. On orange days, these are days when the pollution is relatively serious, there's no burning at all. The agency reaches out to small businesses, gas stations, auto body shops. These are called area sources. There are standards to reduce pollution from these businesses. These standards encourage the use of best management practices, and the agency staff reaches out to these folks to help them deal with these practices. So let's talk about idling reduction. Some of you may see these if you pick your kids up at school. The Department of Air Quality, DAQ, the state agency, and the local agency are trying to encourage folks to reduce idling. And the reason is that car exhaust leads to ozone and PM 2.5. We partnered with DAQ, the Department of Air Quality, to get these signs posted. Let's talk about wood stoves. There are people who heat their homes primarily for financial reasons, but maybe for exercise also, with wood. The unfortunate thing about wood stoves is that they create pollution, at least the old ones do. So we have been encouraging the replacement of old wood stoves. There's a video on Buncombe County TV, and it's really good. There's also information on our website. The new stoves use a third to half as much wood. They produce 90% less smoke and ash. And the EPA and the federal government has encouraged these change-outs with federal tax credits. This number here is not right. These were actually extended to 2011. We've also been involved with diesel fire truck retrofits. Older diesel engines create a lot of pollution, much more than an automobile. For a long time, you couldn't put catalytic converters on these things. The average replacement cycle for a fire truck is 20 years. So the Congress created a diesel emissions reduction program. They provided grants, and the Department of Environment and Natural Resources awarded these grants. We received 2 grants, and one occurred in 2009, retrofitted 20 engines, 7 fire departments, including the city of Asheville. 2013, another grant, I'm going to retrofit 5 more engines. Oop, I'm getting towards the end, okay. Radon awareness. Radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer in the United States, and Buncombe County has some of the highest radon levels in North Carolina. You can see Buncombe County here. The agency, Buncombe County Extension Service, and the North Carolina Radon Program have given out lots and lots of test kits for free. What can we do? I'm going to go over this quickly, but okay, I'll be done in a minute. You need to insulate your home. You need to drive less. Some of you participated in the Strive Not to Drive program. This is really a good program because it raises awareness. We need to buy fuel-efficient vehicles. Last slide. This is a screenshot of the agency website, and if you have any questions about air pollution, go to this part of the website. If you're interested in rules and regulation, you can't sleep some night, go to that. But this is really a good website. You can get to it easily. Western North Carolina, WNC Air or Asheville Air Pollution. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
I just want to say thank you so very much for what the organization is doing as a whole, as well as the board. And I think you do bring good news to our community, talking about the air quality and how it's improving. I do have one question. What about bonfires? Are they permissible in the city, and how does that work?
I don't know. Let me ask some of the staff. Think if it's in the county, you can do it, but this is David Brigman.
Recreational fires are allowed in the city as long as they're okay with the city fire department.
You just technically got to say your name.
David Brigman, Director of the Air Quality Agency.
Okay, now say that one more time.
Recreational fires are allowed in the city of Asheville as long as they're okay with the city fire department.
Okay. That's a question for the fire department. I didn't know that. Okay. Council, any other questions or comments?
I had a couple of questions. One is about radon. Why do we have such a high concentration here?
Radon is produced by granite, and so a lot of people have radon in their basement. Radon is radioactive, and so if you're watching your TV down in the basement and there's a lot of radon down there, that's a problem.
So we've got a lot of granite, so we have a lot of radon.
Yes.
And just real quickly, so people can connect these two dots, how does turning the lights off at your house help air quality? Can you connect those dots? How does conserving energy do that?
Well, what it does, if you're not using electricity, then you're taking less electrons from the power plant. You're producing less air pollution. It's a very minor source of pollution, but if you have lots of people leaving their lights on all the time, then it can become significant, and that's a good reason to put in energy-saving fluorescent bulbs.
Thank you.
Councilman Pelley?
Yes, it's certainly good news to see the trends on the particulate and the smog. Particularly on the particulates, it looks like it's come down about 40%, the level since the year 2000. So what do you attribute that to, the reduction in both of those levels?
Part of it is weather. We've had really good weather the last few years. We had some really bad years around 2000, 2003, and we were pretty close to the air quality standard. The Clean Smokestacks Act has made a huge difference. So that required a decrease in SOx, which is a sulfur oxygen mixture, and NOx at all coal-fired power plants. That has been, that's probably been the main reason. Currently, the main source of pollution here in the mountains is vehicles.
So the fact that it's reducing, vehicles are getting cleaner, is that?
Well, vehicles are getting cleaner, but the major source of pollution, even though we have catalytic converters on school buses and on fire trucks, and the new diesel trucks have they use fuel that has very little sulfur in it. All of that has reduced the pollution, and we've been reducing pollution by industry also, so that now the major source of smog and PM, or ozone and PM 2.5 is now transportation.
Thank you.
Quick question.
Councilman Hunt.
We know that Duke Energy and power suppliers nationwide are becoming less and less reliant on coal-fired plants as other forms of energy come online, renewable and otherwise. And Duke is in the process of retiring coal-fired plants. It's not known publicly where the Skyland plant might stack up on the list. If the Skyland plant were taken offline and retired, what kind of effect would that have on the graphs that you showed us earlier?
Well, Skyland is not going to retire that. I'd bet you $1 they're not going to retire that power. I'd bet you a lot of money they're not going to retire it. And the reason is they just put all this scrubber. They were the first.
Okay.
That was when Progress Energy owned it, and that was the first coal-fired power plant in North Carolina that got a scrubber, got a SOX scrubber and a NOx scrubber. And so I don't think we have to worry about that power plant being retired. That's pretty much state of the art.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Davis.
Dr. Call, I appreciate your report, and I think you're being modest. I think it's really neat what we're doing at the Western North Carolina Regional Air Quality Agency. They've done a great job of permitting, and this board has been very effective over the years at doing something on a local level that not many regions are allowed to do. So I think that y'all deserve some of the credit for that, Ashley. You guys have done a great job, and I appreciate what you do for the community.
Yeah. I don't get paid. I'm a volunteer.
Yeah, a great
and
volunteer.
So I'm looking at this sort of from the outside, and I'm very impressed with the agency. They work really hard. They have good relationships with industry, and I'm proud to sort of be a follower. Thank you.
Thank you also very much for being here this evening. Council, our next update is from Mr. Richardson, who's going to talk about a legislative and water update. And he is coming in.
Mayor Bellamy, members of council, thank you so much for the opportunity for me to continue to be here on a bi-weekly basis for our regular meetings of City Council, for me to give you a brief update on the legislative activity in Raleigh. Much of what I'll cover tonight we have been tracking for a number of months since these bills have been entered and have been making their way through the General Assembly. The first of which probably as much familiarity in our community as anything that we're dealing with right now, House Bill 488, which became law on 5/14. That was not signed by the governor. Mr. Ost attended a hearing in Wake County on 5/14, and there is a temporary restraining order that is now in effect. And Mr. Ost and the legal team is preparing for the next level of legal activity on this. We'll continue to keep you abreast of anything that's going on. And I'll stop there and ask Mr. Ost if there's anything on the transfer control of the water system that you would also add.
Nothing that I could add to what you said.
House Bill 252, which is the amendment that would no longer allow the city of Asheville to use up to 5% of the utility revenue. House Bill 252 is alive and well. There is nothing that locally in our budget that we are contemplating moving the 5% over for next year, but this bill is still alive and was referred to committee in finance on 4/4. House Bill 418, the Parks Authority
Wait,
bill.
can you back up to that House 252?
Yes.
this has become law. Correct? It's a session law now, so it's been ratified.
252?
It says, no?
The Sullivan Act amendment became a session law in 2009.
Right.
The
But 252, which would, go ahead, I'm sorry.
5%, it is not law yet.
No, ma'am.
I thought it was.
I'm looking at that.
No, ma'am.
Carry on.
Mark's
Carry-
looking it up.
At our, and I apologize for the confusion, at our last work session, I believe there was some discussion that it had become law, and that we have checked this as recently as late last week, and that's not the case. House Bill 418, the Parks Authority. Again, council has been tracking this in earnest, and we've continued to talk with folks in Raleigh, and that has been referred to the Senate Committee on State and Local Government on 5/7. I checked as recently as this afternoon, and I do not know when that's going to be heard by this committee. We do not. It's to be determined as to when they're going to be hearing this. Moving over to annexation and ETJ, House Bill 224 became law on 4/17, and we're continuing to work with Buncombe County to make sure that there's no confusion in the ETJ moving forward. This also would prohibit Asheville from doing involuntary annexation. House Bill 568, I checked on that this afternoon, and that has been referred to the Finance Committee, and our folks in Raleigh that we're working with does expect this to go to the full Finance Committee, but we do not have a time as to when this has been scheduled yet. And this would be the de-annexation bill of property at the Asheville Airport. Moving over into tax restructuring, Senate Bill 394. There continues to be a lot of movement in the General Assembly with tax restructuring, but we're still not sure yet as to what that's going to look like at the end of the session, and we're continuing to monitor that. Nothing in addition to report to you on the business tax reduction and reform, which would eliminate the privilege license tax effective January 1 of 2015. We'll continue to monitor this to see if there is additional discussion in Raleigh. Same with House Bill 708, which is public enterprise systems and the use of funds that would prevent cities from transferring money from an enterprise fund to any other fund, with some stipulations there. As I've reported at the last council meeting on 5/14, that went to the Committee on Rules and Operations on 5/2. Nothing else to add on House Bill 962, which was the bill that would allow cities to adopt a 0.5% sales tax within their corporate limits for infrastructure improvements. Several environmental related laws, House Bill 94 and Senate Bill 112. That could be a report. No, I'm just kidding. This environmental law, House Bill and Senate Bill, it clarifies how the Commission for Public Health must adopt rules pertaining to landfill development permits. This does have an effect on the city, and we're continuing to monitor this as it moves through the General Assembly. Senate Bill 612, again, I've reported on this prior. This Regulatory Reform Act requiring DENR to develop minimum design criteria for stormwater runoff permits, again, in the mountains. We're very interested in anything related to minimum design criteria relating especially to stormwater and erosion. There has been, since I reported last, this went through the House on third reading in the House on 5/13, there has been some friendly language amendments. I've not had a chance to talk with our IT director today about this, House Bill 664, but the League of Municipalities said that it is friendly language that would assist cities, and I'll continue to look at this and report at our next meeting on what this means for the city of Asheville. Just a couple more. Senate Bill 677. This is new that I'm reporting to the council for the first time, local government regulatory reform, and it has to do with how cities work with our labor unions, both in police and fire, and it has to do with language that would to withhold any labor union or organization dues from employee compensation and such, and so we're continuing to look at this to see how that would affect our relationship with both our police and our fire unions. Two firearm-related bills. One is House Bill 937, which would, if passed, this would allow concealed carry of firearms into establishments serving alcohol at events where admissions are charged, public parks, greenways, or would allow someone to keep a gun in their car while on state government property, and including university campuses. Then finally, as you know, Council, we do collect, confiscate a significant number of firearms, and House Bill 714, Senate Bill 443, if this is passed, it would forbid law enforcement officers from destroying fully functioning firearms, and it would lay out for us what we would have to do with those firearms, including either using them for training or to make them available through an auction to a licensed dealer. So this is some activity that we've tracked in the last couple of weeks, and we will continue to track. That's just the highlights. Again, the staff in the manager's office has been doing a really good job updating our matrix that's out on our Asheville NC web, and I'm certain that if you've had an opportunity to look at that, you've seen a broad array of activity. Happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Councilman Bothwell.
Yeah, I have a question. I saw an article in the paper the other day about an environmental law, and it may be in the language of the law you mentioned there, that will allow groundwater pollution to the edge of properties, as for instance at the Duke Power Plant at Lake Julian. That certainly could have a local effect here. Maybe on the next update, if you find out more about that.
I'll certainly do that, and I appreciate that question.
Any other questions or comment from council? Thank you. Mr. Richardson.
Yes, ma'am.
Council? Yes.
Mayor, just to follow up on what Mr. Richardson reported, as council knows, the crossover deadline was May 16th, which is a little more than a week ago. I did check on the status of House Bill 252. It did pass one house. It made the crossover deadline. It resides in the Senate right now.
Thank you very much. The next item of business is an update from the Asheville Metro Area Zero Energy District. Councilman Bothwell is going to make a presentation. Welcome, Councilman Bothwell.
Thank you for the opportunity to do this.
And if you could just state your name for the record.
There we go. I can do that. And then
Just hit F.
how do I get, which?
Just hit F5.
Okay. Oh, cool. Okay. This is the first PowerPoint I've ever created, so I've finally entered the modern era, I
And
think.
if you just state your name for the record. State your name for the record.
Oh, yeah. This is Cecil Bothwell, City Council. It's appropriate that I'm presenting this idea here tonight, partly because there's a meeting in 2 nights from now, which I'll talk about, partly because the idea came here with New Belgium, so it fits in with Beer Week very definitely. I didn't realize when we scheduled this that it fits so well. And also that it fits with the air quality report we just heard, because this project is part of getting a lot of those lights turned out and helping to reduce the demand on the Lake Julian plant so that we'll generate less pollution here. This is about the Asheville Metro Area Zero Energy District. Well, what is a zero energy district? It's a place where residents and businesses aim to produce as much energy as they use. A zero energy district can be a specific geographic area or a virtual district in which anyone can participate, and both models have been used in their places. The long-term goal is to make Asheville energy independent and to keep more money in your pocket. Amazed aims to educate people about affordable energy solutions, to encourage them to take action today and to take bigger steps tomorrow. So presently, Asheville derives most of its electricity from the coal-fired power plant at Lake Julian. It requires train loads of coal blasted from mountaintops in Kentucky. If you raft or canoe on the French Broad, you see those trains often, loaded up with coal, pours pollution into our air, creates tons of toxic coal ash, which we're hearing is now being buried at the airport, right at the edge of the river, where if that membrane breaks, it'll pollute the river like mad. And it sends your hard-earned dollars to Duke Energy Progress and Peabody Coal. Now, here's the progress so far. The city of Asheville has been reducing city operational energy use by 4% per year since 2007. We've cut our water use significantly. We're heroes at water conservation in this city. We are also recycling champions. Since we brought the Big Blue rollouts into operation last summer, we've increased the amount of recycling volume by about 80% and really cut what we're dumping in the landfill. We have the highest per capita ownership of hybrid cars in North Carolina. That means that people here are willing to pay more for a car to use less fuel. And the question is, are we ready to take the next step? So here's some potential alternatives we're going to work on at this meeting Thursday night, which is modeled on the Food Policy Council, which has been so successful at getting community involvement. We're going to teach Amazed participants 3 simple things they can do today to save money. We can create short classes to teach Amazed participants the next 3 steps and encourage them to share those ideas. That's working really well in Durham right now. We can create a competition between neighborhoods. Who can save the most energy? That's happening in Fort Collins, where New Belgium's coming from. We can help establish funding streams for more ambitious retrofit and solar projects. We know we tried that PACE program idea a few years ago and ran into legislative roadblocks, but there are ways around that. Has it worked elsewhere? Yes, it has. Fort Collins, Colorado established Fort Zed in 2011. It's a 2 square mile zero energy district. It's expanding to include a virtual district because they had so many people outside of that area that wanted to be part of it. And it's already attracting new industry to the city. It can be part of redevelopment of our River Arts District. So this is the Fort Zed area. That's the 2 square miles. The lower left is downtown Fort Collins, and the upper right is where North Colorado State University is, and New Belgium's up there near Vine Drive. And it's generating jobs. Existing businesses have added new lines of work. They're finding ways to integrate the different businesses, so they're helping each other to learn to use less energy. More than 7,000 customers are participating in just a year of full operation. Residential and commercial, they've reduced peak demand by 20 to 30%. If we can reduce peak demand, that means Lake Julian can turn down its burners. That's a significant kind of change. It really will have an effect on air pollution. They are expanding to include thermal energy and transportation options, and New Belgium Brewery produces over half the electricity it uses during peak solar hours. Their roof is covered with solar panels. They take their beer mash after they make the beer and re-ferment it to make methane gas, burn the methane in a generator to make electricity. It's just an amazing operation here, and that's the kind of plant they're going to build here. So they want to be part of a zero energy district here. How can we do it? Micro hydro works really well, and that's a little water generator. Works really well on small streams in this region. We can use wind power. There's lots of wind generators now that'll work on the roof of a house. They're small ones, not necessarily big ones like that. And that's the roof of my house. I just installed photovoltaic cells. I'm at net zero. I'm going to be producing as much electricity each year as I use. So I will not need anything from Lake Julian. Although, accurately speaking, I will send power to the grid during the day and buy it back at night, so I will be still using Lake Julian sun. You can learn more May 30th, that's this Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Dr. Wesley Grant Southside Center. And here's who've already been talking. Since last summer, we've been having meetings about this. Asheville Green Opportunities, Asheville Independent Restaurant Association, Blue Ridge Sustainability Institute, Earth Fair, Evolve Energy, New Belgium Brewing, Sierra Club Beyond Coal Campaign, which is determined to shut down the Julian plant soon, Smith Mill Creek Permaculture School, and the WNC Green Building Council. So here's 3 things you can do today. When you go home tonight, unplug your microwave, stereo, TV, and other appliances when they aren't in use, or put them on a switch bar, a breaker bar. Those vampire loads, keeping those things humming when you're not using them, cost you $10 to $30 per year. Never leave a TV or radio on when you aren't home or watching or listening. An average TV costs you 20 cents per hour to operate. A big screen costs about double that. Always do laundry with cold water. You save 40 cents per load. Here's the big bonus. Join the Duke Energy Wise program. Just give them a phone call. They will come to your home and install a little gizmo on an electric hot water heater or on the heat strip if you have a hot air, an air handler that pumps heat. And they'll pay you up to $75 per year for doing that. And what they do is when they hit a peaking problem, which is their big problem, they got to always have enough juice. When they're peaking, they'll turn off your hot water heater for 5 minutes. It'll happen a couple of times a year. You will never notice. But they'll give you money to do that because they need to keep their peak power demand down. Let's go. Amazed. The Asheville metro area, zero energy district.
All right. Councilman Bothwell, so there's not a resolution attached, so what would you need from City Council? What do you need from City Council?
Just the attention of the citizens watching. I'm hoping this will continue to be an entirely voluntary operation funded by citizens in their own homes and businesses. The main thing we're going to look for, if it operates, if it's as successful as the Food Policy Council, there may be ideas that are generated from this community that we'll bring to council and may need approval, as we did, say, with expanding the farmers markets and that sort of thing. But I'm not asking for any money or any resolution at the present time.
I just wanted to make sure. Councilman Smith?
Cecil, this is great. It's a really fun name too. I really appreciate that, and I like the process. Good to see all those partners. I saw New Belgium isn't on the list of partners yet. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, didn't I put it on there?
Was it on there? Okay, I just missed it.
Yeah. I've been talking with Jen Vervier, who was their chief sustainability officer, and she's been at some of our meetings.
And you made a visit out there, didn't you?
Yeah, I went to Fort Collins in November and talked with, the city there owns the utility, which made working it really simple.
Yeah, and that was a question that I had. I don't know, maybe you know this, but as far as restrictions on energy production, be it wind or microhydro or solar, are there any restrictions that we should be aware of?
You have to get it approved by the utility. I had to go through the utility had to approve it. The building department, the city building department had to approve the plan. The installers had to be licensed, electricians, and so forth. So you have to, it's like any other building project. And you have to get the utility approves the idea that you're going to do it. But they're mandated to add green power. So they actually want us to be doing some. Because in the end, they can make more money by producing less power. It's those peaking things and building new power plants that really cost them a lot of money. And if we can help them not need new power plants, it actually helps their bottom line.
Well, I think it's got a lot of potential, and I'm glad to see you're going to carry it forward and take this process forward. I'll try to make it on the 30th, and one piece that I'd throw in there is that while we're in this process of remaking our river district and having this opportunity to say, hey, while we're here at this place is the right time to make this kind of decision, this is what I want to talk about as well is around internet connectivity and being able to have the kind of high-speed network necessary down there. So if we're looking at smart grids, if we're looking at kind of grid pieces, I guess I'd throw in the connectivity and having some big pipes down there for the internet as well.
Yeah, something I didn't mention, I really was trying to make that quick, and I probably even rushed too fast, but one of the presenters Thursday is Maggie Ullman, who's going to talk about, her office did a carbon footprint of the east of the Riverway community. And that's one of the reasons we're starting there, because we actually already have a baseline of what energy is being used by residences in the neighborhood upslope from the River Arts District. And so we've got a baseline for the residences, and then we have a major commercial partner in New Belgium that wants to get it kick-started. I've talked with Stephanie Munson about this, and she thinks that it could be, if the River Arts District becomes known as a green energy district, it can be a selling point in recruiting businesses as part of the whole redevelopment. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions or comments from council? All right, council, we're going to proceed with quarterly reports. The first report is from the Finance Committee Chair, Vice Mayor Manheimer.
Okay, briefly, the quarterly report for the Finance Committee. A report is attached to the agenda for those of you who are interested in a full elaboration. But in this last quarter, we facilitated the process to pick a new auditor for the city, and we're very pleased with the responses we got and the selection made. We also explored partnership opportunities with UNCA to ensure that a greenway is put on the property that will connect Weaver with Broadway headed into downtown, along and across the property that once was the Momentum site, which is now owned by UNCA. We also authorized entering into a contract for consulting services to look for savings at the Nature Center. The Nature Center is a costly city subsidy, and we're hoping that there are opportunities there for some savings to reduce the subsidy needed. We also reviewed all the fees and charges that were rolled into our budget, which is now pending for us. We looked at the cost allocation plan for the way that costs for central services are allocated across departments. And then finally, we looked at some preliminary engineering reports for the North Fork Dam. The North Fork Dam is part of our water infrastructure, and it's apparent that there are different issues that will need to be addressed up at the North Fork Dam. That's an aging infrastructure, and of course, it needs to be repaired and maintained from time to time, and that's a costly process and one that requires careful planning. And so we began looking at some of the evaluations and inspections being done up there and the work that's going to need to be done in the coming months and years. And that's it.
All right, thank you very much. Next update will come from the Public Safety Committee, and the chair is Councilman Bothwell.
We talked about a number of public safety-related issues, of course, in the course of the quarter. One big one that came up was drug enforcement on two different tracks. One is I had a request from constituents to learn more about the cost of marijuana suppression in Asheville, and it turned out that the Chief Anderson was unable to give us any particular breakdown of marijuana control versus drug control generally. It isn't compartmentalized that way. So he gave us a report on the drug collections and so forth and the state of the situation. The big change that's happened in recent years is moving to synthetic drugs, which are sometimes sold as a substitute for marijuana, and apparently cause some pretty psychotic behavior. So suppressing those has become a major problem. And the problem that was reported to us is that there are chemical combinations that are easily changed. And so far, the state law has been to identify each chemical combination and make it illegal. And by the time a sample, by the time it's discovered on the street, the manufacturers can change one molecule and it becomes legal again. And so these manufacturers were constantly changing the molecular structure, and they'd send the samples to the state lab, and it would be 6 or 8 weeks, and then they'd find out that it was actually not an illegal drug. So it made regulation of it extremely complicated. There is now state legislation pending in Raleigh that would change the way that's defined to match other states that have more success. And it apparently is state by state. The laws that have the correct kind of legislation, they have no problem suppressing it. We had a report from Safe Carolinas talking about the idea of the city supporting an expansion of the evacuation zone around nuclear power plants in the case of accidents. And they requested that we're going to get more information back from the fire department further along. I think Chief Burnett will give us more information. But the argument is that the evacuation zones, as currently defined, are too small. That looking at Fukushima, for instance, the damage went a lot further than so it could happen here. We talked about bicycle wayfinding signs that are going up, which have come through council here, thanks to Ken Putnam. We talked about massage ordinance changes. It was kind of fun to report that a while back that we actually had the strictest massage rules in the state. So anybody who says this is a wide open town is completely wrong. But we tried to change, we're working on changing the laws so they're more in line with the rest of the state. For instance, the law was that under 21 you could not get a massage without your parents being present. And that pretty much screens a lot of college students who are living away from home who might want to get a massage. And we talked about the Humane Society contract and the DWI task force. In fact, this last weekend they had a big DWI program statewide to find drunk boaters and drunk drivers. And that's it.
Voters, not voters.
Boaters, not voters, boaters. No, we already closed the bars on Election Day, right?
Councilman Bothwell, I had sent over some information about a gun buyback program that community members want to assist the city in developing and helping to fund. Have you all had an opportunity to talk about that?
No, we haven't talked about it. That would be toward in the fall, right?
Well, the individuals who would like to assist in paying for it would like to know
sooner.
Yeah, or when that would come forward, or at least the conversation.
Let's put it on the June. That's
Okay.
the last Monday in June,
Okay.
or the fourth Monday in June.
Thank you for consideration.
Yeah, and that's an interesting. I think it's worth discussing that the effect of the gun law that Mr. Richardson just talked about here, to prevent the destruction of guns that are collected, is going to take a lot of the incentive away from people to contribute to gun buyback programs, because people usually contribute hoping to get rid of the guns. And
I did like that there was one of the stipulations that allowed for a museum-style display of those guns. I think we could probably get creative with that.
oh, okay, let's do that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, we're going to move to our next update, which is from Mr. Richardson. It's the strategic operating plan, and I think yours is connected to the financial plan, and so we'll let you tee it up.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Bellamy, again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. This is our third quarter update, and Mayor and Council, you should have found in your packets this week a full 9-month update as to where we are with your 6 strategic goals that you identified at your last year's planning session. I do not have a formal presentation for tonight. Rather, I would ask that you receive the third quarter report. We do have staff that are here tonight. If you have questions, it's a very in-depth, as you know, 36-page update. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Staff will as well. Mr. McDowell has also provided a financial quarterly update for the third quarter, and Tony is here this evening as well, and happy to answer questions on the strategic plan. Happy to turn it over to Mr. McDowell, who's also here to answer questions on the third quarter financial update, whatever council's pleasure is at this point.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, tell me, were you collapsing you were doing the strategic operating, but now we need the financial?
Yes, ma'am, and I'm sorry, I probably wasn't clear. Happy to answer questions on any of the information that we provided on the strategic plan third quarter update. At the end of this year, wrap-up will come with a very comprehensive public presentation. Mr. McDowell is also here to answer questions on the third quarter financial update.
But
so if
no
you have
presentation.
no, ma'am. If there are no questions on any of that information, then we'll be prepared to go to the budget presentation tonight. That's our next presentation for council.
Yes, I didn't have the one with the cheat sheet. The next item is item E, the budget presentation, and we'll call on Lauren Bradley for that presentation.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and City Council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to present to you the manager's recommended budget for the upcoming fiscal year 2013-2014. Tonight, there's no action necessary on behalf of City Council. Instead, you're just here to receive the manager's proposed budget, and we're here to answer any questions that you might have or receive requests for additional information that you might need as you move forward in the budget process. From here, you will have a public hearing on the budget and then move toward adoption in late June. So there will be additional opportunities for you all to receive information, make changes to the budget. You may need to adapt and make some changes based on just the legislative environment and some other factors that we'll discuss, but you'll have through the month of June to do that. So it would not be a budget presentation this year if I did not show up with the iceberg. And the iceberg is meant to kind of look back at where we've been in this budget process that really has dated back to October and before, and even before back to 2010, where we started to talk about the city's financial structure and some issues that we were seeing with the financial structure, where we had identified a pattern where revenues were not growing as quickly as expenditures were, a factor that was certainly exacerbated by the economic recession. In terms of talking about those structural issues, we also talked about the community and what the community's vision for Asheville was, and some of the strategic goals and master plans that we wanted to implement, and how we would be able to do that and still maintain a level of affordability in Asheville that provided our quality of life access to people of all incomes and abilities. So we were at a crossroads, and we've been talking about this crossroads for several budget cycles, and certainly during this budget cycle as well. What is exciting and I think positive about the manager's recommended budget this year is that we are making significant progress and strides to addressing those structural issues and making some changes, taking some actions that will really address the long-term growth of expenditures and revenues into the future, so that Asheville is poised to take advantage of some of the economic recovery that we're seeing and implement some of the goals and vision that the community has. So as we started this budget, some of the goals that we talked about achieving, and that I think that we have achieved with the recommended budget, is to seek opportunities to restructure services to make sure that we're delivering them in the most efficient way possible, invest in core services and infrastructure to be able to achieve our strategic goals and build tax base, maintain affordability for citizens and business, invest in our workforce and employees who are making this all happen at the City of Asheville, and build a financially sound budget that protects us against some of the uncertainty that's still out there in the environment, certainly with the economy, but more, probably more urgently with the legislative environment. I put this slide in here because when we talk about the financial structure and expenditures and revenues, I'm afraid sometimes there's a perception that city government spending has been not checked over time. And this slide shows you what really has happened in terms of general fund spending over the last decade. And it shows you that general fund spending per capita in Asheville has actually decreased 10% when you adjust for inflation. So while our population has increased, our spending per person in Asheville has actually gone down. And that's to show you that Asheville has been, over the last 10 years and before, while holding the tax rate flat, very efficient with its expenditures and its actual spending. So we're not talking about spending that's gone unchecked. And again, couldn't make my last presentation without this slide. But we're really talking about the rate of growth of revenues and how those have been, expenditures have been exceeding the rate of growth of revenues. That rate of growth of expenditures was exacerbated by the recession, impacts on real estate and home sales in our region, and it kind of magnified this issue for us to take a deeper look at and address in our budget cycle. So we entered the budget process, I think, with the vision of really taking steps to address these long-term financial issues so we could invest in infrastructure and achieve some of our strategic goals. And along the way, we were poised, I think, to do that. We had a plan for balancing the budget that did look at line item reductions, freezing vacancies, but maintaining core services, and restructuring some things like the city's role in festivals and events. So we had a plan for balancing the budget, but as we moved forward, there were several legislative initiatives that were introduced that could impact and could still impact the city's financial picture and budget for the coming year. There are several assumptions that we've built into the manager's recommended budget because at this point there are unknowns, things that we can't know, but we have to make some assumptions about to build a budget. As we move forward over the next 30 days, some of these factors may change or they may take a different course. So we've set up contingency plans for each of them should you need to change the budget before adoption or even after adoption. The three key ones that I would mention to you are the disposition of the city's water system, statewide tax reform, and the creation of a countywide culture and recreation authority. The budget assumes that the city will continue the management and operation of its water system, since council has unanimously voted to legally challenge that legislation, and because we don't know what the outcome or the length of that legal challenge might entail, it assumes that we would keep the water system for the full year and that its contribution to central services would be included in the general fund. In order to plan for a contingency should the city not continue to manage and operate the water system, the budget proposes to defer some expenses that we talked about and also to set aside fund balance as a contingency, and that would be fund balance that's in excess of our 15% policy requirement, and we're generating that fund balance by capturing some current year savings to set those aside. In terms of statewide tax reform, because we don't know what the final outcome of that legislation might be or what the actual quantifiable impact might be, it's been said that the intent is to make that change revenue neutral for cities, but we've not yet received a city-by-city calculation of what that might actually mean for Asheville. The proposed budget assumes that we would see $1 million increase in state revenues, and you get to that $1 million by assuming the loss of our utility taxes, but there would be a partially offsetting increase in sales tax revenue. We plan to make up the loss of this revenue with mid-year savings that would be generated by the creation of the Culture and Recreation Authority, which is the third major legislative assumption. The budget does assume that the creation of this authority would move forward and that all of our parks, recreation, and cultural arts services would move to that authority with the exception of our community centers and the services provided at those centers. By moving these services to that authority, it would reduce expenditures by about $2.5 million in the upcoming fiscal year. Another factor in the upcoming budget year is that this is a reval year in terms of taxes, and we are required to publish a revenue-neutral tax rate. And the manager's recommended budget actually proposes a revenue-neutral tax rate for Asheville. A revenue-neutral tax rate is defined as the rate that's estimated to produce revenue for the upcoming fiscal year that's equal to revenue that would have been produced if no reappraisal had occurred. So I've walked you through here how you actually can calculate that, or how we have calculated it, so citizens can see that. It'll be published in the budget document. We have determined our revenue-neutral tax rate to be 43 cents per $100 in valuation. And I'll try to quickly walk through this in a way that's easy to understand. But our tax levy is actually the amount of property tax revenue that we would receive. It takes that property tax levy and it multiplies it by a natural growth rate factor. So it says all of your natural growth that you would have gotten through new construction and that kind of growth, you get to keep. And you calculate that growth factor by taking an average of your growth over the past 7 years. So our average 7-year growth rate was 1.75%. You increase your tax levy by that amount and you get the new $47 million number. Then you take your tax base, so that's the value of real and personal property, and you adjust that number down for what you expect to see in appeals losses. And that appeals loss number is actually provided to us by the Buncombe County Tax Assessor's Office. They've made their way through most of the appeals, and they estimate our loss to be about 2.17%. So when you take that adjustment down out of real property, it takes your tax base down from this $11.3 billion number to 11.1. And then you can see kind of the algebraic formula there that says what tax rate, given that tax base, would give you your $47 million number and property tax revenue, and you land at 43 cents. 43 cents is the recommended tax rate in the manager's budget. So moving on to general fund revenues. We talked about revenue neutral, and I'm sorry, this 2.9% number is incorrect. Revenues are projected to increase by 0.6% in the upcoming budget. We're projecting some growth in property tax revenue. The 8.5% growth in sales tax is a little misleading. That number has been bumped up as part of the tax reform offset. So you've heard that the theory is that utility taxes would go away, but you would make that up in sales tax revenue because the sales tax base is going to be expanded, meaning different services, new services would have to pay sales tax, so you're going to see new revenue in sales taxes to offset that loss. So the 8.5% growth is not growth on the same sales tax base that we've seen in the past, or an indicator of economic growth that like we would typically see in sales tax. Then there is a $1.9 million decrease in revenues as a result of other proposed legislation, including tax rate reform, but also the airport de-annexation and insurance reform that we talked about earlier in the budget process. The budget does not include a fund balance appropriation, but as I mentioned before, it does intend to set aside $1 million above the 15% fund balance requirement as a contingency. And that was our plan for the water system, should the water system not be maintained with the city of Asheville. But it also could be a contingency if the Culture and Recreation Authority is not formed, or if there are other revenue impacts that we've not yet contemplated that might come as a result of other legislation. Other revenue enhancements worth mentioning is the $7 monthly solid waste fee that was approved by City Council in March. That replaces the $3.50 monthly recycling fee, and it helps cover the cost of solid waste services, recycling, and other sustainability efforts. So this pie chart just shows you an overview of the breakdown of general fund revenues. You'll see the biggest piece of the pie is property taxes, which is 53% of the revenue mix in the general fund, followed by sales tax, which is about 20%. On the expenditure side, the budget includes a 3% cost of living adjustment for all city employees. This recommendation was made based on a market-based compensation study that City Council asked for at the end of the last budget process. You'll remember that analysis recommended that we adjust all of our pay ranges, the minimums and maximums, up by 3%. So it made sense to move, if pay ranges were moving 3%, to move all employees along with those pay ranges 3%. General fund expenditures on the whole, though, are only going up by 0.6%, which this is a positive thing, and this is the trend that we were hoping to see when you talk about containing the growth of your expenditures, where you're still able to invest in your workforce, but you're doing it without seeing your rate of expenditures go up and go up dramatically. The way that we're able to do that is because we're assuming the transfer of the Parks and Recreation services effective January 1st. We're contracting out our street and sidewalk construction services. And we have about $1 million in savings factored in from frozen positions and line item reductions. The general fund contribution to the pay-as-you-go CIP remains flat, but it does include the issuance of additional debt above what we're retiring, and our plan is to use the second-year savings from the Culture and Recreation Authority to pay the debt service on the debt that we would issue in the upcoming year, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So here's the expenditure mix for the upcoming year. You'll see 47% is public safety, the largest service sector, followed by environment and transportation and general government. So quickly, other funds. The water fund includes a modest rate increase that was also approved in March, 1% on residential customers, multifamily and small commercial. We also created this year a manufacturing class of customer where there's no rate increase on the largest manufacturers and a 1% increase on the smaller manufacturers. Expenditures in this fund have been adjusted down to reflect the actuals we've seen in the last 7 years, and this is allowing us to increase our contribution to capital by almost $10 million, so that's significant. The CIP for the water fund next year is $18.2 million. So we're continuing to make great strides in the investment of water infrastructure, and you'll see in our 10-year financial model that that trend continues throughout the following 10 years. Stormwater, the fee remains unchanged, and we are able to include a pretty significant allocation for capital for rolling stock replacement and other capital maintenance projects. The proposed budget includes an expected $100,000 loss of state funding for transit, and so the general fund transfer has been increased to cover the loss of those funds. The parking fund includes a rate increase, a 25-cent rate increase for hourly rate parking at meters and in garages, and that's expected to produce about $400,000 in new revenue. The revenue that's being generated from that fee increase will be used for the parking fund's contribution to central services. In the past, the water fund has contributed to this overhead through a cost allocation plan, but we've not charged our other enterprise funds. So this is the first year that all enterprise funds are going to contribute to central services to the general fund for their fair share of those support services. The U.S. Cellular Center is seeing some promising signs of event bookings for the upcoming fiscal years. We've seen a couple of years of down events, partially due to renovations at the facility, but also because the economy was continuing to recover. Seeing some promising signs of event bookings in the upcoming year, and expect revenues to be similar to what we saw in fiscal year 2011. But the center is going to hold a couple of positions vacant to ensure that we keep that budget balance throughout the year. Another success story is the Golf Fund, where in the last year the city decided to lease the municipal golf course to Pope Golf, and that's a move that had a positive financial impact in the proposed budget of over $200,000. That $200,000 comes from the elimination of the subsidy, the general fund subsidy of the Golf Fund, plus a lease payment from Pope Golf to the city. And finally, the Internal Service Fund. This is the fund that we use for our health care plan, our self-insured health care plan, and also workers' compensation and property casualty. In the upcoming year, the cities and employees' contributions to health care are projected to remain flat, so that's good news. We've done a good job of keeping down health care expenditures and maintaining a focus on wellness. It also includes a reallocation of workers' comp and property casualty costs across all funds. So as you look through the budget document, you'll see some shifting of those costs across various departments depending on what their actual claims history was in the last several years. And finally, the proposed budget includes our second-year contribution, which is $400,000 from the general fund to our annual required contribution for OPEB. And OPEB are other post-employment benefits. It's retiree health care for us. And this is an incredibly important initiative that the city started 2 years ago to maintain or to make sure that we're covering our long-term liabilities when it comes to retiree health care. It's something that many cities haven't been able to do or haven't made it a priority to do, but it is looked on very positively and favorably by rating agencies and creditors. So, shifting gears into the capital improvement plan, this is an area where between now and budget adoption or even after, you may choose to have additional council dialogue, discussion, and a better understanding of what is proposed in the capital plan, because this isn't, in the past we've spent more time on capital, and in this budget process we didn't, because we were really focusing on operating and what those legislative impacts might mean on the operating side. What we've done with capital is that on the pay-as-you-go side, the funding remains flat. So for pay-as-you-go capital maintenance and city projects, debt-funded projects, it looks very much like a continuation CIP. What is good about the continuation CIP is that we're retiring some debt, which will allow us to issue $10 million in new debt without having to put additional money into the capital plan. That $10 million is intended to fund a public safety radio infrastructure project that has a pretty sizable price tag. It's about a $6 million project, as we know, as we understand that project right now. It also includes the Hendersonville Road sidewalk project, among others. And this shows you the breakdown of those CIP revenues, and you can see the largest piece of that pie is for the new debt issuance. And then on the expenditure side, it shows you how for those revenues, how those are broken down between multimodal projects, equipment and technology, buildings, facilities, and vehicles. I would highlight that we're making a significant investment in vehicle replacement. This is an area that we've identified that needed additional funding in prior years, where we are actually spending more on keeping older vehicles in our fleet over their life cycle than if we replaced them. And so this is a smart investment, this is a good investment, and proud that this is a year where we're taking a step in that direction. We also are proposing the creation of an economic development CIP fund, and this is something that we talked about through the budget process and before as a major initiative for us to be able to invest in infrastructure and other capital projects in a way that helps build property tax base and leverage private investment in targeted areas to do that. The way that we're able to launch this fund in the coming year is that we would issue the debt, about just over $11 million in debt proceeds. We would issue the debt next year and begin these projects, but the debt service payment for those projects would not become due until fiscal year 15, the following year. And it has been our plan to use the savings, the full year savings that would come from the Culture and Recreation Authority in order to pay the debt service for these projects and also enhance other parts of our CIP. So possible projects that this fund might be able to begin next year include the first year of RADTIP, so that would be getting that project totally shovel-ready and to 100% construction drawings, affordable and workforce housing, the potential to construct another parking deck, multimodal improvements downtown, undergrounding utilities downtown, and Asheville Art Museum renovations, among others. And there's a detailed list of proposed projects in your actual budget document. But this would be an area I think that you may want to talk about more through budget adoption or after, to really understand where we're making those investments, why we would recommend those investments, and then what would be the expected return on those investments moving forward. If the CRA isn't implemented and we choose to move forward with the Economic Development CIP, then we would have to, in fiscal year 15, look for alternative funding sources in order to support the debt that we would issue. So looking ahead, I think that this year is a year where we are seeing, I think, some of the fruits of the difficult decisions that we've had to make and council has had to make in the last several years during the worst economic recession, at least in our history. That crisis certainly has required us to reevaluate how we provide services, what our core services are, and how we invest in them. And I think the City of Asheville has done a remarkable job when it comes to maintaining its core services but minimizing the impact on the taxpayer during a very difficult financial time. I think the city has also done a great job of charting a course for the future and making sure that you have long-term financial sustainability to continue to invest in this community, to see the community grow how you want it to grow, to create jobs, and to invest in infrastructure that promises to build tax base and attract employers. And I think that this proposed budget has the beginnings of a strategy that can really take the city to the next level to be able to do that. The downside, or the flip side of that, of all the good stuff that's happening in this proposed budget, is that the city will have to remain adaptive to change. There's still a lot of uncertainty in the environment, especially when it comes to the state legislature and what might happen with bills that have been proposed but haven't actually become law, and what the impact might be, and if the Culture and Recreation Authority moves forward, and what the legal outcome might be of our challenge to legislation affecting our water system. So as I go to next steps and say, we will have to continue to work with Buncombe County on the Cultural and Recreation Authority, and then the two dates for you to look forward to in terms of the budget are June 11th, you have your public hearing on the budget, and June 25th, we are scheduled for budget adoption. That is the last meeting. You have to adopt the budget before the end of June, so that's your last meeting to be able to do that. With that, I will say thank you, Mayor and City Council, and I would turn it over to our City Manager to ask if he has any comments that he would like to make.
The closing comment I would make is that Lauren Bradley, Tony McDowell, John Sanchez, and all our management staff have done an incredible job of working through this budget. This is unlike any budget we have put together because, in fact, we're putting together 3 budgets, 3 contingencies you're aware of, and 3 plans that we have in place depending upon important decisions that are made at a legislative level. Through it all, Lauren Bradley has provided exceptional leadership, management, and supervision of the entire process. So I think it's some of the best work we've seen in that regard, and we're going to miss her as she moves forward from this. So hats off to Lauren, John, and Tony McDowell for the job that they've done on this, and we look forward to working with council. As I know you'll have lots of questions, and we'll continue to monitor the legislative arena very closely so that we can choose from among these difficult decisions and options that are before us.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Councilman Hunt, you had a question?
I have a question and a comment first. I'd like to echo Gary's appreciation to staff. This has been perhaps the most challenging budget season for City of Asheville in quite a while. And I'd like to especially thank Ms. Bradley. I think the public knows that she is moving on to another job very soon, and this may or may not be the last time you present to us. In case it is, I want to make sure that the public knows that you've been a great asset to the city. Your communication skills, your strategic ability to view things strategically have been really, really helpful to me and to us on council. They were just on display here. I think it was a great presentation of a very difficult subject matter, so thank you very much. But your work's not over. I've got a question about the budget. On page 69, this is a multi-year CIP plan. It's not, the out years are not really part of the formal budget, but under Vibrant Downtown, we have Downtown Clean and Green Initiative, and earlier tonight we talked about the Business Improvement District and how the purpose of a business improvement district would be to address clean and green initiatives, most of which are operational in nature, pressure washing sidewalks, removing graffiti, tidying up. There may be some repair and maintenance of sidewalks and all that go in that. So this seems to appear in the out years under CIP. I note there's nothing for the upcoming fiscal 14 budget year. So, yeah, and I'm asking for clarity about this tonight because, as we discussed earlier, the effect on the bid is a point of curiosity and near-term discussion. So, first of all, would it be that some of this perhaps belongs in operational as opposed to CIP? And secondly, we're talking about really no downtown clean and green for the 2014, the operating budget year this year.
Correct. Yes to all. So that line item was included as we put together the economic development investment strategy, and downtown has been identified as a core area for job growth and tax-based growth. And council had expressed in the past some desire to see a greater level of service when it comes to clean and green downtown. I think the policy discussion that prevented it from moving forward was the funding. You know, how do we fund that? We seem to agree that we want a higher level of service, but how do we get there? And so when you get to that fiscal year 15, you'll see that year one is all debt. And so those are more operating type services. You would probably include that in the operating budget. And we do that with capital maintenance, like paving, resurfacing. Resurfacing is actually in the operating budget, but we show it in capital. So it would be one of those items. Year one is all debt because we don't have the additional funding in year one to do it. But in year two, you actually have some enhanced general fund funding in the capital plan that you could use toward this type of capital maintenance or operating type of service. So we put it there for council's future consideration, such that if the interest remains there to invest in a higher level in downtown, that you have a line item that would allow you to do that or to do other projects or services.
Helpful, thank you.
Yes.
I have a related question. Clean and green is alliterative, but has anybody actually said what the green part is?
I think that is something that as you moved to adopting the budget for that year, and if you intended to include it in there, that you would more specifically define what is clean and green or what is that service mix. I know you all had kind of extended conversations with the volunteer group about what that meant to them and what service level that might provide. I think this funding source here contemplates that the city might actually fund and manage those services, and council would work with staff to identify what they are. Now, you could choose to contract it out or do it a different way when you get there, but I think as you adopted that budget, you would want to be more specific about what those services are and what's needed at that time.
I guess I would then ask Councilman Davis, since you've been at the bid meetings, have they ever talked about what they mean by green? I hadn't heard in the...
They really had, they picked up that line from other bid models, which is consistently used to describe cleanliness in downtown areas. The green probably was, in those models, more streetscape than to be carbon reducing. I do think that they had great intentions of recycling programs, but they realized that this is early on in that. So my assumption is that it was more clean than green.
Right, and you're right, the recycling would qualify in that.
Yeah, Mark was going to add something, and we saw this in the early or the late stages of
the most recent form of the budget that the proponents of the bid organization presented, which I think at this point was about 8 or 10 weeks ago, actually dropped the green term, and it was clean only. But that and that was specifically in response to concerns like the one you just expressed about the definition of green. Yeah. So it really shifted to a clean, and it was specific about graffiti removal, sidewalk cleaning, and things like that.
Councilman Smith.
Question for Lauren. What you got there, she is. Just talk a little bit about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund allocations.
Sure. So the Affordable Housing Trust Fund allocation is included in the operating budget and it maintains its current level from the current fiscal year at $500,000. In the Economic Development CIP, you'll see a separate line item that's for affordable and workforce housing. And in year one of the budget that you're adopting, it shows $1 million allocation, and that is the $1 million loan that has been committed to the Eagle Marketplace development. And then in the future years, you'll see a $500,000 allocation that gives City Council the ability to invest in other projects moving forward under a structure that you see most optimal for economic development purposes. So it would be the trust fund allocation would remain $500,000, and then you would have an additional allocation in the economic development CIP in addition to the housing trust fund. So that this line item doesn't replace the housing trust fund allocation.
And that was what I expected. I just wanted to kind of double check
Sure.
those numbers. And I know that part of what we're trying to do in putting this budget together, this particular contingency that we have before us, dependent upon that CRA passage, is being able to not only maintain our current levels of service, but to do the reinvestment pieces in the River District and South Slope. And I was wondering, particularly in regards to the South Slope, what kind of investments we're looking at there.
What we've contemplated in the South Slope so far are things like multimodal improvements, streetscape improvements, undergrounding utilities in that area that would make residential and other types of development more feasible on lots right now where that's not feasible because of setback requirements. Other investments include and this is not in the South Slope area, but in other parts of downtown, sidewalk repair, sidewalk extension, projects of that nature.
Thanks, Lauren.
Any other comments? Do want to remind the general public that the public hearing for our budget is on June the 11th, and so that's where we'll have an opportunity to hear from the community about our budget. And you can request a copy of the budget if you want a hard copy, and we can call the city clerk's office and she'll provide that, or you can it's provided online. It's already posted, and so you can go to asheville.nc.gov to get the information. Before we go into closed session, I too want to say, Ms. Bradley, thank you for your 10 years of service to our organization. I can recall when you first came and you helped us with our information issues, and we had several at the time, and through your leadership and your plans, we were able to navigate those issues. One of the main issues was our website wasn't user-friendly. And your staff, working with IT, helped to create a platform that helped us start along the lines of making sure people had information about how to engage with the city of Asheville. Under your leadership in information, we changed how people interact when they had complaints. And so making sure that when people call for service for complaints, they actually got a person as opposed to automated services. And so we appreciate that. And then you moved over to finance. And I think you've created a wonderful team, as it's been said here tonight, but the work that you and Tony have done over the years, helping and working with Ben, I think we've been able to navigate some rough waters. And I just want to say thank you for your work. It's been a pleasure to see you grow as an individual and as an employee of the city of Asheville. When I think about integrity and the core services and the core values that we promote as a city, you exemplify them all. I wish you much success in your future endeavors. I hope that the private sector treats you extremely well because you've deserved it. I thank you for your leadership, even with your Master's in Public Administration, the ability for you to be able to create a plan that has been implemented. It went from just an idea and a concept to be actually put into practice because of your leadership and your ability to see issues, to be able to address those issues. I sincerely appreciate you. Again, thank you for the work. You have a strong legacy here at the city, and I think you've done a remarkable job, and I just salute you. Council, we usually take a break here, so I think that we do have a closed session and we do need a break. And so, Council, let's take a break for about 15 minutes. And Councilman Pelley, would you please read the motion?
Mayor, I move that Asheville City Council go into closed session for the following reason. One, to consult with an attorney employed by the city about matters with respect to which the attorney-client privilege between the city and its attorney must be preserved, including a lawsuit involving the following parties: State of North Carolina, City of Asheville, Metropolitan Sewer District of Buncombe County. The statutory authorization is contained in GS 143-318.11A3. Second, to prevent disclosure of information that is privileged and confidential pursuant to the laws of North Carolina or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes. The law that makes the information privileged and confidential is NCGS 143-318.10E. The statutory authorization is contained in NCGS 143-318.11A1.
Second.
The motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further questions or comments from council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The motion carries. We're in closed session. Good evening. I'd like to call the City of Asheville's council meeting back to order for May 28, 2013. Council, we have 3 public hearings, and the first public hearing is to consider conditional zoning amendment to the Asheville Academy located at 1709 Hendersonville Road to facilitate the development of a 8,215 square foot daycare facility. Julia Fields will lead the conversation, and then we'll open a public hearing for public comment.
Okay. I've put a site plan out, although this really isn't about a site plan, but there are some implications in terms of traffic, and so we'll address those. You're all familiar with the Weirbridge Village project and the different components, the multifamily housing and the commercial outparcels. When this conditional zoning was approved in 2006, one of the conditions that was placed on it was a listing and limitations in terms of the uses that would be allowed on the commercial outparcels at the Hendersonville Road side of the property. And from here, this is Hendersonville Road, this is Weirbridge Drive, and these are the last 2 commercial outparcels that are being developed or proposing to be developed. One of the things that was not included in that listing of permitted uses was child care centers, and so that's what this amendment is about, is to add to the listing child care centers. Staff feels that this is very compatible use with the other uses that are approved from the development. But again, the central issue that came up and was of concern both to staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission and to some other interested folks is how the safe maneuvering would take place for anything that would occur on this site. Because if you'll recall, you approved another amendment to have right turn in, right turn out only for the fast food restaurant that is going here. So how do you then get folks, whether it's a child care facility or whatever, out and through all of that and do so safely? One thing to keep in mind is that, and there was a traffic impact study done, and actually a child care facility will probably produce less traffic than a lot of the things that were listed as a permitted possible use for the outparcels that could potentially go at this location. Again, staff finds this request to be reasonable, and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended it to unanimously with some conditions, the conditions in the TRC staff report, all the standard conditions being met, the recommendations found in the traffic study for a child care facility, and you received those, so I won't go through those, but we do have both our traffic engineer as well as the traffic engineer for the project here if you have any questions on that. And lastly, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that the developer consider providing an additional pedestrian crosswalk at some area conducive to pedestrian traffic coming from the residential area. The thought being that folks who were here might want to walk down here, and the developer has already addressed this with our transportation folks, and our transportation folks, and again, they can address this further if you have questions, feel that it's very unsafe. Because if you come across here, there's really no ADA compliant way to get around you'd be coming through a fast food drive-through area, and so there was a lot of concern. So this has already been addressed, and staff would recommend deleting that particular condition. There is an ADA compliant route to come around and down via Racket Club Road and enter here, which is much safer. That completes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Fields. We'll open the public hearing up for public comment. And we will hear from representatives of the development. And Mr. Mooney, if you could just state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mayor Bellamy. My name is Clay Mooney. I'm a landscape architect for this project. I'm here this evening representing the developer, Rusty Pulliam. And as Ms. Fields said, this is the primary issue here is use. We're requesting this amendment to be allowed to utilize a daycare use. Daycare is allowed in a regular HB zone. This is a HBCZ conditional zone, and our omission of that is inexplicable. It just slipped through the cracks. A few things with regard to this specific daycare. It's a relocation of an existing daycare that's literally within a half mile of this location. Its hours of operation are 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. It is not open on weekends or holidays. So this facility will have 180 children. That's down from 5 at its current location, so actually be a few less children and traffic associated with that. As Ms. Fields said, some of the concerns that city staff had was with traffic. We engaged Madden and Craig, James Vaso, to do a traffic study. They actually did counts of the existing facilities, both the McDonald's, which is a relocation from another existing site just down the road, and the existing daycare. So we have real-world counts. It's what's happening there right now. So they were able to come up with some accurate data that you usually don't get on a project like this. Usually we just have to consult with national projects, how they're average over the U.S. So we have actual data. From that, they came up with recommendations of how to improve the circulation with this. Those, as Ms. Fields said, you have. The developer supports those. They are all common sense ideas, and we think will certainly aid in the smooth operation of this. One of the unique features with this daycare and its ability to help control traffic, as it were, or promote smooth operations of traffic, is that every year they have a required orientation session with the parents of the children that attend their facility. So within that, they have created a wayfinding or trailblazing map, if you will, that clearly indicates the path that the traffic engineer and also the city staff think would promote the least conflict with any of the McDonald's traffic. So the parents, they have that, they are able to get that map, and they have to sign that they have received that, understand that, or are willing to comply with those directions. So it's a rather unique situation that you wouldn't have in any other type of situation, whether it was retail or convenience store, whatever, any of the other uses. This is really a unique thing that helps this situation greatly. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. If I can't answer them, as I said, the traffic engineer is here. The owner of the daycare is here. If you have any particular specific questions regarding this orientation meeting and how that might function, we're all here to try to help you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to address council this evening? All right, we'll close the public hearing. Council, any questions, comments, or motion? Or Bob, any things that we need to add? Or
no, this is conditional zoning, so there's I would suggest that when you make your motion that you add that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan and any other plans,
Okay.
as identified in the staff report. That's on the basis of the statute now requires that.
Okay. Council, questions, comments, or a motion?
Just a quick comment, Mayor. I appreciate this use being so near to dense apartment housing. I think it's a great associated use. I just hope you won't feed the kids at McDonald's.
A lot of happy meals.
Mayor?
Councilman Pelley.
Yeah, I guess maybe Mr. Moore. Mr. Pulliam reported to me that we've been talking about this property a lot lately, about the concerns of the adjoining neighbors in Crow Fields, and Mr. Pulliam has reported that, in fact, they've negotiated to open that access point there. Can you confirm that for us?
Mr. Mooney.
What I can, what I can confirm is that Mr. Pulliam and I met with representatives of the Crowfields Board on their property to look at, explore, and discuss the potential locations that the easement would allow them to connect to. We even discussed, I even gave them a name of some engineering firms that they could contact. They are working with a surveyor to get that information or that location surveyed. So I know that they're doing that and that they are proceeding, but I cannot give you anything in more detail than that. But I know that they are moving forward with survey work and the hiring of an engineer.
Great.
Okay?
Good.
All right. Council, we need a motion.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And that's to include a statement that is consistent with the plans as identified in the staff report.
All right. Any further questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The motion carries unanimously. The next public hearing this evening is a public hearing to consider conditional zoning RS8 residential single-family high-density district and community business 2 district to community business 2 district conditional zoning for the Biltmore Hill project located at 63 Brook Street. Jessica Bernstein will make the presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. As the mayor just stated, this is a conditional zoning request. The project site consists of 4 separate parcels with a combined area of 1.66 acres. You can see on the Exhibit A map, they are zoned CB2 up along Brook Street and Reed Street, and the parcels in the rear are zoned RS8. Also, this largest parcel is split zoned RS8 and CB2. This is at the very edge of the Biltmore Village Historic District. And that yellow line highlighted on the map indicates what area is within the historic district as opposed to what's not. So anything that's in this end of the project would be subject to the Biltmore Village Historic District guidelines and design overview. So you can see there is just one structure up at the top on Warren Avenue. It's a single-story bungalow, and then everyone's probably pretty familiar with the existing strip center there. It's mostly vacant. Two uses still remain, but that is what's on the site right now. Adjacent zoning includes CI, CB1, institutional, and then the CB2 and RS8.
What's the, just to get myself oriented, what's the institutional use?
No, this is it's actually offices. This is, as you go down Reed Street on your left, it's a number of different offices and maybe a little bit of medical use as well.
I think it's a leftover zoning because it's definitely not institution.
Right. So the proposal here, like I showed you on the site, it's a single development proposal, but as everyone who's familiar with this area knows, there's a very steep grade change, about 50 feet between Brook Street and up to Warren Avenue. So while it's a single proposal, it really functions as 2 separate developments. They're not connected for pedestrians or vehicles. It really functions in 2 separate ways. So I'll run you through the 2 development areas separately. The first is the building along Brook Street. This is a two-story building with retail on the ground level and residential above. It's similar to some of the other buildings that are just in the area across the street. The building with Fig and Wink on the bottom also has residential above, so it's not too different from that, 6 residential units. The parking is access to the side of the building. There's 2 driveways. One is a entrance only, and the second driveway provides exiting motions, straight and left and right turns. As you can see, there are 21 parking spaces in that lot. That's less than what's required for the uses for this mixed-use building. 49 spaces will be required, but the UDO allows you to do remote parking in these situations. So as long as you can supply adequate parking within 500 feet and provide safe access between those 2 locations, that's acceptable. So the applicant is going to be improving a parking lot here. This is at 2 Fairview, and as you can see on the highlighted map, they'll be providing sidewalks and pedestrian access to that separate parking area. Otherwise, that site will have the open space and landscaping as required, also significant pedestrian improvements, sidewalks all along the frontage. There'll be brick according with the Biltmore Village requirements, and the design of that structure will be governed by the HRC as well. They've had a preliminary review, and they'll be going back soon after your recommendation, your approval. They will be going back for their formal design review. The other building up along Warren Avenue is exclusively residential. This is on the residential side of the site, so there's no mixed use, no office, no retail, just residential, 7 units. That building's 30 feet tall, with complying with the UDO's guidelines. Like I said, the design review guidelines with Biltmore Village is not required, but it's going to be a similar design because it will be quite visible from the village. Access to the 10 parking space lot is just 1 driveway across from Dodge Street, and this site has its own landscaping and open space requirements that are provided. There will be some significant retaining walls. This was a part of the discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission. You can imagine with that grade change as significant as it is, there will be a number of different retaining structures, both standalone walls as well as the building foundations that will be incorporated into the site. The walls that are down along the parking lot, behind the parking lot of the Brook Street building, those walls will be governed by the Historic District, but the walls that are up above the site will not be required to comply. The project, there's one modification that was included in your staff report. It's actually an administratively approved modification, so it doesn't require your action. It just reduces the width of the landscape buffer. There's significant landscaping up along the top of Warren Avenue, and that will be reduced in width. That was done because of the topographical change. We have that allowance in the UDO. I also forgot to mention there will be no sidewalks along Warren Avenue. That's not a needed linkage. Warren Avenue also dead ends just past this site. There's only 3 structures across the street, 3 single-family homes that are along Warren Avenue, so the Transportation Department did not require sidewalks there. The project was approved with conditions by the TRC on April 1st. The applicant held a community meeting on the 11th of April with the Merchants Association. They were all very favorable of the project and quite favorable of the remote parking. They were interested in using that for some of their employees as well, so I think that was definitely seen as a benefit. I've spoken with 2 neighbors who live up along Warren Avenue. As mentioned, there were 3 houses. I've spoken with 2 of them. One was very favorable towards the project, thought it looked great. The other neighbor was concerned about his potential loss of view and the increase of traffic from those 7 units coming onto Warren. The small size of the project does not warrant a traffic impact study. We did not see it to be going to create a traffic hazard. Staff feels that the project does comply with the city's standards and goals and objectives. First, we're a little concerned about the scale of the residential building that's up above. Since it is 3 stories and taking the place of a single-story bungalow, it seemed that it might have a little bit of a negative impact. But when you look at the height going into the neighborhood, the grade continues to gain. So when you get to the neighbor across the street, across Warren Avenue, you've gained 25 feet. As you get further into the neighborhood, when you get to the Biltmore Inn, you've gained 50 feet. So this building is perched at the edge of that hill that continues to climb behind it. So it really does mitigate that view impact because of the height. So staff does recommend approval of the conditional zoning, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you've got them.
At this time, we're going to open a public hearing for public comment. And so we're going to hear from a representative from the developer. And if you could just state your name for the record.
My name is Brian Moffett with Arca Design. I'm the architect for the project. Good evening. Did a great job. I really don't know of anything I need to present as far as the design or the thinking goes. We would say that we had sited the residential building at the end of Dodge as much as we could so that it would not impact, it wasn't directly across from any of the actual houses along Warren.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other members of the community wishing to address council this evening? We'll close the public hearing to public comment. Council, questions, comments, or a motion?
Motion, Mayor, to approve conditional zoning for Biltmore Hill from RS8 to CB2 and CB2CZ.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further questions or comments? I would just, yes, Mr.
Again, I'd like to include the statement about consistency with the comprehensive plan and with the vision plan and council goals.
Okay.
So included.
All right, and I just want to remark that this is a needed improvement along this corridor, and it extends the village, and so I really appreciate this investment. It's going to transform that corner, and it's needed, and thank you so very much, and definitely the added parking, and so thank you so very much for that. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The motion carries unanimously. Council, we only have one more public hearing, and it's the public hearing to consider the rezoning property located on Thompson Street from River District to Urban Place District. Blake Esselton will make the presentation. Welcome, Blake.
Thank you, and good evening. The site, as the mayor mentioned, is on Thompson Street. The closest landmark for orienting folks would be the Tobacco Barn. It's actually across Swannanoa River here, but the Tobacco Barn is near this corner of the map. And some may remember seeing a similar rezoning back in February of 2007. There were some properties along the Swannanoa River as well as properties near the French Broad River that were rezoned from River District to Urban Place, as is the case with this rezoning, for compliance with the Wilma Dykeman Plan. And this is sort of a continuation of those zonings. In fact, at one point during that process, this property was included as part of the rezonings, and then the applicant withdrew the property from consideration at that time. The applicant's desire is for the increased residential density that the Urban Place zoning district provides. River is certainly a high-impact zoning district, but its maximum residential density is a fraction of that provided in the Urban Place. And staff feels that the urban character is appropriate and, as mentioned before, in compliance with the Wilma Dykeman Plan. At the time, at the rezonings from February 2007, staff recommended approval. Staff feels that this rezoning is similar to those, and staff has received no comments from the public. It is noteworthy, and the Planning and Zoning Commission was interested in the flood hazard area. This requires some explanation, however. You will remember the most significant floods in recent memory were in 2004. The area was mapped, that is to say, the terrain was recorded in 2005, and since that time, the applicant has modified the land here. They have decided not to request a modification to the actual maps, however, until their modifications are complete, at which time they will request a modification. But much of the land here that is shown in the 100-year floodplain has actually been elevated so that it is no longer in the 100-year floodplain. But the applicants have said that it would be appropriate, for example, to have an exit on Stoner Road so that in the event of a flood, there would certainly be an egress that wouldn't be compromised by the floodway here along Thompson. Staff feels that the request is reasonable. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan as well as other plans and council goals, and staff is recommending approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval at their meeting earlier this month, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Usselton. We will open public hearing up to public comment, and we will hear from a representative from the developer.
Hi.
And if you could just
I'm
state your name.
Lisa Stevens, George Morazzani's office. I'm actually the project manager on the site. I will clarify the flood issue. It actually only requires about 11,000 cubic yards of dirt entirety over the site to bring it completely out of the floodplain. Once that dirt is brought on, we would apply for the FEMA map modification. It shouldn't be any issue. There's plenty of area for the parking to be surface parking, people to get off the site quite adequately. So it should be fine.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. All right, we'll close the public hearing to public comment. Questions, comments? Councilman Smith?
I'm going to try to save Bob a breath here. I move to approve the zoning map amendment from River to Urban Place as a standard rezoning and find the request is reasonable and is consistent with the comprehensive plan and other adopted plans based on information provided in the staff report and as stated in the staff recommendation.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly second. I just again want to say to this area, Mr. Morsani, thank you for your investment in this area. It's this side of the river that needs a little bit more investment, especially along this corridor at this place. And so thank you for this investment. It's going to transform this area. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Thank you. Ms. Daniel, I just want to say thank you so very much. We saw 3 different planners come before us tonight that shows our economy is moving forward. And so we're really proud of the Planning and Zoning Department bringing forth great projects for us to approve, and it shows in our community the economy is coming back strong. Thank you so very much. Council, I'm going to turn it over to the Vice Mayor for the remainder of the meeting, and you will adjourn as soon as you make the appointment.
Okay, the final item on our agenda tonight, besides public comment, is to appoint one individual to the Historic Resource Commission. Earlier today, council had the opportunity to interview 3 very well-qualified candidates. We always get great candidates who apply to the Historic Resource Commission, and it makes the decision difficult, but that's a great luxury to have. I think what we ought to do is maybe just...
Vice Mayor, I believe that there are 2, and then council, it was consensus to reappoint David Nutter as well.
Oh,
right.
Yes.
So
well, that's great.
Total of 3.
Okay.
Total of 3.
Total. So, but I think we agreed last time that we were going to reappoint David Nutter, but we wouldn't officially do that until we did the appointments tonight. And thank you for refreshing my memory. So, in addition to the reappointment of David Nutter, we are selecting 2 from the 3 we interviewed. Yes. Maggie's nodding yes. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and each select 2 and see if that does the trick or if we need to go around one more time. Maggie, are you ready, for the tallying? Okay, let's start down here. Mark, please.
Mr. Farmer and Ms. Russell.
Ditto.
Farmer and Russell.
Same here.
Akins and Russell.
I'm going with Farmer and Russell. But Chris, I'm glad that you mixed it up a little. That was, that was good.
Mr. Farmer and Ms. Russell will be appointed.
Mm-hmm. All right. That concludes the new business. And now for public comment. And I'm just looking to see if there are any sign-up sheets. Whew, we're getting unpopular. I don't have any sign-up sheets, but I see one willing participant. Please step forward and state your name for the record. You will have 3 minutes to provide us with your public comment.
That's amazing.
Good evening, Council. My name is Timothy Sadler, and I have 2 comments. The first being I want to thank you, Councilman Bothwell, for your asking the police department to for the specific dollar amount associated with marijuana enforcement. I wonder if we can make that formal request of the police department. I think it's absolutely disgraceful that we waste taxpayer money on marijuana enforcement. I'd like to share a quick story with you folks. I had coffee the other day with a lady who is a successful entrepreneur in this community. She has 2 successful businesses. She has Crohn's disease, and she needs medical marijuana to help her with her disease. She has to be a criminal because of our backwards law. So I think that it's wonderful leadership that you showed simply by asking that question. I would encourage council to make that formal request of the PD to track how many taxpayer dollars are spent on marijuana enforcement. And second, I would like to point out that, of course, we don't have Sunday service still with the transit, and every day that we go without that, we are failing our people that need transportation to get to work. I had a great conversation with an employer recently who pointed out that if they see that on an application a person does not have reliable transportation on Sunday, they throw their application out. So just please be aware of that before you decide to spend money on the art museum, on any number of things that you decide to spend money on before adding Sunday service. You are failing those people who rely on that transportation. And I think my time's up.
Thank you, Mr. Sadler.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else wishing to make public comment? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Oh, do you want to make an announcement? Sorry.
Just real quick.
Wait, I didn't tap it yet. Okay.
Oh, good. This is for Gary. It's a good point that Tim brought up around Sunday service. It's the number one goal of the Transit Master Plan. We've been able to forward a lot of those other priorities to the Transit Master Plan, and going forward as we're looking at capital improvements, I understand that resources are so very limited, but over the next 5 years, it's one of my goals to be able to get that transit system in place where it is fully functional, which would include that Sunday service. I was just wondering if you could speak to that for a moment.
In terms of this budget, what we put together, and I don't want to give a long answer to this question, but in terms of this budget, what we're actually reducing cost in several areas. There is no service expansion. We're doing the best we can with the means we have. To the extent we are trying to take advantage of the Cultural and Recreation Authority, at this point, as we've talked to council before, our focus would be on capital improvements, on getting return on the investment in terms of job creation and additional private investment, taking better care of the infrastructure that exists, moving forward, as you can see in that plan, those projects that help us increase the revenue stream so that we might be able to get into strategic services. If it's the council's desire instead to reallocate those funds, we can certainly do that.
So yeah, and just so I see Tim re-entered, I just want to make sure that he heard that what we're trying to do is keep service levels where they are, do reinvestment to be able to grow tax base so we can get to a place where those service expansions are possible.
That's correct. We have such a high backlog of street maintenance and other types of maintenance, infrastructure maintenance, and a desire to put infrastructure in place, new sidewalks, new the River Road improvements, that those are the conditions. That's the community development that makes it possible to increase the tax base, increase the jobs, that will then give us the income stream so that you might be sitting here at another day with the flexibility to add or expand services. What we're doing, so the sooner the better, but at this point what we're trying to do is invest in the business.
Another one, let me just add real quick, that I heard about recently. A young woman told me her husband worked at a restaurant, and because there's no bus service late at night, he'd taken to sleeping in an alley beside the restaurant to catch a morning bus to get home. And she suggested, and I guess others might have talked about this, what's the possibility of a late night circulator route, maybe just to get a loop of some sort for restaurant employees, because many of the people who can't afford cars are working those low-wage jobs.
Probably the best thing that we can do to make our transit system more viable is increase ridership.
Yeah.
By increasing ridership, you increase revenues. By increasing density of development pattern, by investing in that infrastructure I was describing before, you bring more people to the core, you put more people on the bus, and you make it the transit system less dependent upon the general fund subsidy. And right now, we're looking at less federal dollars and less state assistance, for that matter, to go into it. So all the economic development, the capital improvement strategy is intended to make this an urban center, to make those tools of transportation more viable.
Just one other quick note. It's a small but important improvement, but the buses were running yesterday on Memorial Day, a holiday. And this is the first year we've been able to do that, so it's a small, important step forward.
Bus service is improving, and what we need to do is continue to be the kind of community with our development patterns and housing opportunities to attract young people, young professionals, the people who can be riders of choice. We know we must provide services for the people who are dependent upon public transportation to really get to be a viable urban transit system. The conventional wisdom now is you bring in the people who have a choice. And those kinds of decisions to upgrade the buses, improve the efficiency of the routes, is what makes that possible in our community. And that is the major improvement that's occurred in the last year due to the Transit Commission's planning and the adoption of your master plan.
Thanks, Gary. And everybody go to the Amazed presentation, Thursday the 30th, 4 to 6 p.m., Grant Center.
Okay.
You'll be surprised.
We get our own public comment period. We're adjourned.
All right. The public